The world has made significant progress, you say in that report, in response to HIV. But this is now in jeopardy, isn't it, with these funding cuts, or are we going to be okay?
Well, I think the good news is the progress that's been made. If you remember 30 years ago, we didn't have antiretrovirals. And certainly in Africa and many other countries, we were seeing just hospitals overwhelmed with people dying, young people dying, children dying because of HIV. So we've made huge strides in terms of getting people onto treatment, people living long lives, avoiding all the complications of HIV. But one of the problems, particularly for the African region, the good news was that we got a lot of support. George Bush Jr. started the PEPFAR program, which gave huge amounts of funding support for HIV and TB programs to the African region and to South Africa. What happened at the beginning of this year was that the administration in the US stopped US aid support. So that meant that suddenly there was funding withdrawal without any planning. So many countries, including South Africa, suddenly found themselves confronted with services that they were no longer able to support in the short term. So if you're asking the question, has this had an impact? It's had a huge impact, and particularly on the poorest countries in the region. And it's had an impact in South Africa. But many governments are now regrouping, including in South Africa, and saying, well, how do we deal with this and what is our responsibility here? And many governments are now starting to take strides to try and both use their own money to fill the gap, which is difficult, but also look at alternative ways to deliver services.
Yeah, and of course, you know, there must be lessons learned from the time that we did have funding to be able to reach all our goals, etc. There must be some lessons that we can take with us even in this difficult time. So some regions, Prof, are very close to achieving the targets for testing, for treatment, and even viral load suppression targets, for example. Will the funding crisis threaten the fact that we are reaching our targets or getting there?
If we think regionally, and particularly for the African region, which has been the biggest recipient of the PEPFAR funds, yes, it definitely will. As I said, many countries have limited resources for health services generally, and were very dependent on the support they were getting from the US government. To try and fill that gap is going to be virtually impossible. We're not going to get that amount of support back.